All right, ready to dive into some myths and legends. You know, the ones with creatures that have been freaking people out for centuries.
Oh yeah, we're talking mythical creatures, but not just listing them out. We're figuring out how they stack up against each other.
Right, like who would win in a fight, a werewolf or a kraken? We actually have some source material for this.
We do. An excerpt from Ranking Mythical Creatures, from logical to beyond human understanding. It's wild stuff we'll be going from creatures that might have some basis in reality.
Hold on. Creatures that might be real.
Well, let's just say our ancestors weren't exactly scientists. They were trying to make sense of the world, and sometimes a shadowy figure in the woods became a terrifying beast. The source material calls these almost believable creatures C tier.
Okay, so think misinterpretations, exaggerations, a few too many scary stories around a campfire.
Exactly. Like take werewolves, for example. Imagine living back when medical knowledge was limited. You hear rumors of people who can't be out in the sun, who behave erratically, maybe they even have excessive hair growth.
Wait a minute, are you talking about a real medical condition? Because suddenly werewolves just got a little more interesting.
I am. Porphyria, which can cause those symptoms, could have been mistaken for a monstrous transformation, especially back then. It makes you think about how our ancestors explained what they didn't understand.
It's like a game of connect the dots, but the dots are medical mysteries, and the picture is a monster. I kind of love it. What else is on our plausibility scale?
Well, if we're talking terrifying, we have to mention the Kraken. You know, that legendary sea monster that was said to drag entire ships to their doom. Tentacles, giant teeth.
Okay, that one has to be pure fantasy, right? What could possibly inspire such a colossal tentacle nightmare?
Remember those giant squid we talked about?
Yeah.
Turns out truth is stranger than fiction sometimes, because the ocean is home to some seriously massive creatures. Giant squid can get huge. Imagine being a sailor who catches a glimpse of those tentacles. Wouldn't be hard to imagine a kraken, right?
I guess even the wildest myths can have a grain of truth to them. But we can't talk mythical creatures without mentioning the king, the dragon. Fire-breathing, treasure hoarding. What's the deal with dragons?
You know, it's interesting you say that, because there are actually a couple theories about dragons, and both involve real-life reptiles. One theory is that early humans might have found dinosaur fossils.
Okay, I can see that.
Think about it. You're living in a time before paleontology, and you find this massive, terrifying skeleton unlike anything you've ever seen. Wouldn't that spark some dragon myths?
Yeah, it'd be like finding the blueprint for a monster.
Exactly. And then there's another theory that dragons came from real-life reptiles, but, you know, with a few more. Embellishments. We're talking massive crocodiles, Komodo dragons.
So impressive creatures, but not exactly fire-breathing?
Right, but give it a few centuries, let the stories get passed around and exaggerated a bit. Suddenly you've got yourself a fire-breathing legend. The power of storytelling.
A sprinkle of truth and a whole lot of imagination, and boom, you've got yourself a dragon. But our source material doesn't stop at creatures that might have existed. It goes deeper into the realm of the straight-up supernatural.
Right, and that's where we move from C tier to B tier. These creatures, they're not found in nature, but they pop up in mythologies all over the world.
So there's something about them that speaks to us on a deeper level, maybe, like they tap into some universal fears or desires.
Exactly. It's like they reflect something back at us, even if they're not real in a scientific sense.
Okay, now this is getting really interesting. What kind of creatures are we talking about in this B tier? Give me an example.
Well, we can't talk about B tier without mentioning vampires.
Yeah.
They're the ultimate example of a creature that's both terrifying and alluring.
Right. Immortality, superhuman strength, and a thirst for blood. Okay, maybe not the blood part. But still, you have to admit there's something captivating about vampires. What is it about them that we find so fascinating?
I think it's that mix of danger and desire. But there might also be a real-world connection that explains their enduring appeal. Remember how we were talking about misinterpretations with werewolves? Some scholars think vampire myths might actually be connected to rabies.
Rabies? The disease? How do you figure that?
Think about it. Sensitivity to light, aggression, biting. Now imagine someone exhibiting those symptoms in a time when nobody really understood what rabies was. Easy to see how they might be perceived as, well, monstrous.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection, but what about the whole drinking blood thing? That doesn't really scream rabies to me.
You're right. The blood drinking isn't directly related to rabies. But there's another historical detail that might be at play here. In some cultures, people were terrified of being buried alive, so they would pierce or stake bodies to make sure they didn't rise from the dead.
Just to be on the safe side.
Exactly. Now imagine digging up a grave and finding a body that hadn't decomposed as expected, maybe with some blood around the mouth. It's not a huge leap from there to vampire myths.
Okay, that's definitely creepy.
Yeah.
But moving on from the creepy to the captivating, let's talk about sirens. You know those mythical temptresses of the sea who lured sailors to their doom with their enchanting voices? What's the story there? Is there any truth to these legends?
The sirens. Beautiful, deadly, and potentially inspired by, here's ready for this, manatees?
Wait, manatees, those big, gentle sea cows. I'm not seeing the connection here.
I know, it sounds strange, but picture this. You're a sailor. You've been at sea for weeks, maybe months. You spot what looks like a human form in the water. Maybe you even hear these mournful cries. Manatees actually communicate vocally, and those sounds can travel underwater. Add in a little superstition, a little fear of the unknown, and suddenly you've got yourself a siren myth.
Wow, I guess our imaginations can really run wild sometimes, especially when we're dealing with the ocean. But speaking of mysteries, our source material doesn't stop at creatures that are just unusual. It delves into the realm of creatures that are straight up magical.
Exactly. As we move from B tier to A tier, we're entering the realm where magic takes center stage. We're talking creatures that defy our expectations of what's possible.
And I can't think of a more magical creature than the unicorn. I mean, come on, it's a horse with a glowing horn. But there's got to be more to it than that. What makes unicorns so special, so enduring?
It's true. Unicorns have captured our imaginations for centuries. And I think part of it is that they represent something pure, something good. They're symbols of healing, of spiritual enlightenment even. And while there's no single animal that directly inspired the unicorn myth, the symbolism of a single horn goes way back. Think of the rhinoceros, for example, with its prominent horn. In many cultures, the rhino was seen as a symbol of strength, even divinity.
So it's like taking that strength, that power, and giving it a sprinkle of magic. I love it. But not all mythical creatures are quite as charming as the unicorn. What about trolls? When I was a kid, I was convinced one lived under every bridge I crossed. What is it about trolls that makes them so universally feared?
Oh, you're not alone there. I think a lot of us grew up with that fear. And there's a reason for that. You see, trolls represent something very primal, very human, the fear of the unknown, especially the unknown that lurks in nature. Dark forests, deep caves, those were places where real danger existed.
So trolls became the scapegoat for all those unexplained bumps in the night.
In a way, yes. They were the embodiment of everything we feared about the wild, and the fact that they're often depicted as big, grotesque, not very bright. Well, that taps into our fear of brute strength, of unpredictability. Like you can't reason with a troll, right?
It's true. They're like the embodiment of chaos. But speaking of chaos, something tells me we're about to enter a whole new level of weird. Okay, buckle up, everybody, because I have a feeling things are about to get a whole lot weirder. We've gone from almost believable to definitely magical. But our source material. It doesn't stop there, does it?
Nope, it definitely does not. Get ready, because we're heading into S-tiers territory and maybe even beyond.
S-tier and beyond. Okay, now you're speaking my language. What kind of mythical heavyweights are we talking about here?
This is where we're talking about creatures whose powers, they make dragons look like house pets. We're talking off the charts, mind-blowing power.
Okay, you've got my attention. So give me an example. What kind of creature occupies this next level of mythical existence?
Well, for starters, there's the griffin.
Ugh, the griffin. Half lion, half eagle. All majestic. I've always loved those guys.
They're pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
But they're not just cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
In lots of cultures, griffins were seen as guardians, especially of treasures.
Okay, that makes sense. The lion's strength, the eagles.
Yeah. Well, everything about an eagle is made for guarding, isn't it? It's like the ultimate security system. But I have a feeling that not all the creatures in the S tier are quite so majestic as the griffin. What else have we got?
Let's talk about the hydra.
The hydra. Oh, yeah, the multi-headed serpent. Not exactly the prettiest picture.
Definitely not winning any beauty contests. But the hydra is interesting, don't you think? I mean, this is a creature that just keeps coming back. Cut off one head, two more grow in its place.
It's like talk about a survival strategy.
Yeah.
Right. But it's more than just a scary monster story, isn't it? The hydra. It's like this metaphor for the challenges we all face. You know, the idea that sometimes the more you struggle against something, the stronger it gets.
It's kind of a depressing thought when you put it like that.
Well, it doesn't have to be depressing. Maybe it's more about being persistent, never giving up, even when things get tough.
Okay, I like that take better. But our source material, it goes even further than the S tier, doesn't it? I mean, this whole ranking system, it's about more than just who would win in a fight.
You're right. It's about pushing the boundaries of what we consider possible.
Hmm.
And yeah, it goes beyond S tier. We're talking about those creatures, the ones that make even a hydra look cuddly.
Okay, now we're getting into the really good stuff. So, what kind of creature could possibly be that powerful, that far beyond our understanding?
We have to talk about Cthulhu.
Cthulhu. Even the name sends shivers down my spine. It's like whispering about something forbidden. For those of us who haven't encountered Cthulhu before, give us a quick introduction.
Well, picture. Actually, I'm not sure you can picture it. It's like trying to imagine a color you've never seen before. Cthulhu is, well, it's said to have tentacles, wings, a face that would make a mask look friendly. But Cthulhu's real power, it's not about physical strength. It's about the sheer wrongness of it. It's the kind of creature that makes you question reality itself.
I'm getting the feeling that Cthulhu is less about what it is and more about what it represents,
Exactly. It's like the embodiment of, well, everything we don't understand and maybe can't understand.
I think we've officially reached the existential dread portion of our deep dive.
Maybe a little, but that's the beauty of exploring these myths and legends, isn't it? They force us to confront the unknown, to ask big questions about ourselves and the universe.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've journeyed from the almost believable to the utterly mind-blowing. We've talked werewolves, krakens, dragons. We even touched on the cosmic horror that is Cthulhu. I, for one, am feeling both inspired and a little bit terrified, which is kind of the perfect way to end an episode about mythical creatures, wouldn't you say? What about you out there? What creatures would you put in S tier and beyond? Head over to our social media and let us know. Until next time, keep exploring the world of myths and legends. And remember, sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones we tell ourselves.